Welcome back to Hair of the Werewolf. I'm your host, Chase, and I'm here with my co-host,
Lily.
And we are a horror podcast where we like to sit around in a pub-like atmosphere, have drinks, and tell horror stories to each other.
I can't wait.
We got a really good episode for you today. What are you drinking today, Lily?
I'm drinking an Odell's IPA. It's a classic one, I think.
We love Odell's here.
Yeah,
We've said it in previous episodes. We think it's a great company. I am drinking carbonated water today. No beer for me today. In our house, we affectionately call it sparkle water, which for any of you who like The Secret of Nim, it always reminds me of that when they're looking for the sparkly.
I always say sparkle. Sparkling is too long of a word. I had to reduce it to what it is.
And I just like how we describe a drink as like a sparkle, like as like...
We don't even say water. We say, hey, Chase, can you get me a sparkle? And then
we know exactly what that means.
That's all it is. It's a sparkle.
That sparkle in our eye. So what do you have for us today, Lily?
So today I have a story, unlike one I've done so far.
Perfect. We want some variety.
It's a very strange it's a very, very weird story that I have for you. In fact, it's one that made me look into a lot of different things. I just went on research mode on stuff that, well, a lot of it was because I didn't understand it. It's not really my world.
Sure.
So I had to kind of familiar myself into some of these things that I'm about to tell you.
Sure.
Which I think you know plenty of. However, with me, I'm it looks like every other thing I've seen.
Oh, so are you stepping into my world a little bit?
A little bit. So I had to really beef up my knowledge because I didn't want you to be like, well, actually.
Well, I mean, you better be careful because I'm into a lot of really cool, really well-known things.
You are. These things are pretty obscure. So and you will know them. So
awesome.
Yeah, okay.
So everyone make sure you have your beers because we're going to get ready to tell some scary stories.
Heck yeah. So the story here today is the Polybius Arcade Game.
I know all about it.
No, I figured you would, but maybe you don't know everything.
The arcade game that doesn't exist, but
that does exist, if you want to believe it.
Yeah, this is actually really cool. I'm excited. I can't wait to hear what you've read about it.
Okay, that's true. You're probably going to totally school me and be like, well, there's other information here. But I really tried this time. I mean, I try usually, but
no, by all means.
I really tried this time.
Go for it.
Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to start to say this part because I'm going to have to give you some, prefix information to really hammer in why this game is so interesting. So the arcade game that I'm talking about, Polybius, is a mysterious game that came out in the early 1980s that caused people to lose their minds and even death when they played it. Some say urban legend, like we talked about, and others say a CIA cover-up experiment thing gone wrong. And I guess by the end of the story, you guys are going to have to figure out which one you think it is.
Well, the best part already is there's a picture of a Polybius machine, so we can actually put it on our Instagram account.
Yes, we can. There's a few of them, and I will talk about that.
Yeah, excellent. So,
the name, I'm just going to talk about the name first. It is actually a Greek historian, an important one, from the Megalopolis Arcadia. That's just a region in Greece. But
well, no, yeah, Arcadia was a city.
Yeah, but it's there's still the ruins there, so they still call it that, but whatever. Yeah, it was he was born in 200 BC, died in 118 BC, but that's really a long time, right? What is that? I don't know. Math.
That's 82. When was he born?
200.
Yeah, that's 82 years.
Yeah. He is known for his analysis and separation of power and government, in detail recording the whole rise of the Roman Republic that came into power. So that kind of what's here, because if it's associated with the CIA, it just kind of becomes this whole thing, right? Anyway, the name itself literally means many lives. Poly, many, bias, lives. Now, it also, some people have associated with the Polybius square, which is also used by the Greeks. It's actually just the alphabet in a 5x5 table. It was used for encryptions and just telegraphs to just kind of shorthand things. And because I was wait, there's 26 letters, but that's just modern alphabet, I suppose.
Yeah, they had less letters.
Right, but we still use the Polybius square, I guess, but like they could just combine the I and the J. So maybe that used to be like one letter. It was synonymous, but now we've apparently decided to split them. Anyway, that's just one thing. But the point why I say it is that it came up every once in a while, like the Polybius square. Maybe Polybius is like a secret code for something. So the numbers for Polybius is 35, 34, 31, 54, 12, 24, 45, and 43.
You know, at first it sounded like you were giving Sir Mix-a-Lot lyrics for like how hot this chick was, and I was like, wow, we're getting...
I'm giving her measurements, 31, 34.
Hip part 1, hip part 2, hip part 3.
Oh my god. Actually, that would make her bigger in the middle, because, no, wait, 35 top, 34 mid, and then 31 butt.
Yeah.
That just makes her like a V, I guess. It's okay.
Baby got back.
That's like how I'm built, so it's so cute. Anyway, like I said, if there's someone brilliant out there who, for some reason, those numbers mean something, let a girl know, because I just saw a bunch of numbers, which is, I think, what a lot of people see. So let's get into the CIA. In the 1950s, 1970s, there were several experiments that were led by the CIA to learn alternative forms of mind control. One project that we know of for sure was called MK Ultra. I think a lot of us have heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Or it's also called the CIA Mind Control Program. I don't think they really tried hiding it there for that one, but I think that was after they released information. Anyway, these experiments were performed on humans, and unsurprisingly, many of them were illegal. Some of the techniques that they used were to give their subjects psychoactive drugs, like LSD, and other types of drugs, electroshock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and prolonged euphoric experiences that caused almost pain. But they used these are just some of many torture techniques that they used.
And weren't some of the people able to kill goats with their mind at the end of this?
There was a documentary with what's his name?
George Clooney.
George Clooney.
Yeah. I should check it out.
That was a pretty fun movie.
Yeah, I think it was on PBS. It was part of Discovery or something.
Yeah, actually.
Keep going.
National Geographic's, no. Yeah, so the key focus of this entire project, I guess, was to weaken the mind of those that they were trying to interrogate and to more easily get confessions out of them. So it's just to basically break a person, I think.
Sounds like good, healthy fun.
It really does. It really does. The project actually finally ended in 1973. Along with most of its evidence, it was completely destroyed. Well, and I say almost because, as you know, because how else am I going to know any of this? Few documents did survive.
Yeah, I mean, you have to destroy it because that's a human rights violation,
it was a big
nightmare. To-do. That's the kind of thing that could tear down a government. But, yeah. Back when we used to shred and burn things, I guess.
They just burned it all, and they're like, anyway, let's move on. So, but it wasn't until July 2001 that the surviving information of MK Ultra would be released. A lot of it redacted, of course. But it wasn't until 2018 that a declassified document revealed a letter from a doctor detailing his work on 6 dogs that could be forced to run, turn, and stop through remote-controlled brain implant.
Oh, that's fucked.
I know. Poor dogs in my stories always end up getting the short end.
Man, that's straight up Resident Evil stuff to me. I know those were zombies, but the idea of having controlled evil dogs coming after you, I guess, is why I was thinking Resident Evil.
Of all animals to pick, I don't know what I would pick. Maybe dogs. They're more accessible.
Well, and they can be pretty angry. I mean,
that's true.
I guess you should go
cats. Cats are just bitches.
I mean, I guess I go with a wolf or a bear.
Oh. Well, there are not as many bears.
Well, but it depends where you're attacking. If it's Russia, use a bear because they're everywhere, and apparently Russians love their bears.
Or huskies.
That's true. Huskies as well.
I guess. I mean, I'm not gonna send chihuahuas out there or anything.
I mean, but what would you use in Hawaii?
Chihuahuas.
It's you don't have to put implants in the sharks. They're already trying to kill people.
Yeah, it's
there,
they're already there. Don't worry.
They're doing it.
So let's get into the urban legend. Polybius is an arcade game, like I said, that allegedly existed in the 1980s, specifically 1981, in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. Kids were obsessed with this game, playing it for many hours in one sitting. They were unable to get away from it. It was slowly becoming more and more popular as the weeks passed. But then one day, without warning, after only being out for 2 months, every single machine disappeared from all arcades along with any evidence of its existence. Now, before the game disappeared, witnesses claimed that every week there would be 2 men dressed in black suits that would come into the arcade. They never had anything obvious with them, like tools or anything, but they would open the back of the machine and inspect it. They would leave without speaking to anyone or taking anything obvious. So obviously it became apparent that these men were not there to repair or to retrieve any money that the game had acquired. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are they doing?
Well, they had to leave money for the guy who ran the arcade because he needed money. Why would he carry the machine if he wasn't getting paid?
But all the money? They didn't take anything with them.
Yeah, they'd leave. They were probably getting, I don't know, other information.
Like what kind, Chase?
I don't know. Maybe they had recording devices. They were bugged.
Yeah, because I want to hear what 12-year-olds have to say about whatever the heck was popular at the time.
You never know.
So again, while the machines were still in place, they apparently were able to lure a lot of people to play. So it's just something about it that really just gravitated people. And when they did, and when they played, some kids began exhibiting paranoia, night tremors, absolute obsession of the game, or a complete switch of distaste for all video games altogether. And then there were the more severe symptoms that were displayed later, like amnesia, insomnia, seizures, hallucinations, like hearing a woman crying or seeing a figure from the corner of your eyes. And lastly, suicide.
All right, so there's a lot to talk about here.
Okay.
So I can't explain the hallucinations.
Sure. Who can?
But if we're talking epilepsy and, you know, a lot of the other things, suicide and whatnot, it's super important that we remember this is in the early 80s. Video games are brand new. Video arcades were infamous for having inspiring addictive personalities in kids that you still see today. There's people addicted to video games in Japan.
Of course.
And they definitely show really weird personality traits when they're addicted, including depression, suicide, weird stuff like that.
And they become very isolated, and it just, like, messes with you, right?
Yeah, and people were obsessed with them, especially the young kids. I remember even when I was a kid, you know, all of us played video games to some extent. Some played it very casual, some played it intense, but then there would be, like, those some kids who were just, like, obsessed with it, where they're, like, their parents had to hide the console because they were, like, freaking psychos and whatnot. And so...
But that's just, like, an addictive behavior I think would have been already displayed in someone, because some people are just like that. Yeah,
but what I'm saying is, with the exception of, like, the hallucinations of voices, which actually sound like schizophrenia and whatnot. And those might be isolated instances. I'm just saying, what we might just be witnessing is normal kid reactions that were happening in the arcades anyway. How do we know this is directly related to this?
Some of these are very severe. I don't think, because they're not like the video consoles that you're talking about right now. I mean, these kids still had to go to school. These kids still had to do all these things.
Yeah, but this is what they did after school.
You're right, but they had to go to, you know, home for dinner and then, like, stay there for the rest of the night until the next day. So for these short times that they were playing the arcade, it doesn't really correlate obsession or all these types of things. Now, I'm sure adults could do it because they can do whatever the hell they want. But these were kids that were being affected. I mean, everyone that was playing it, I guess. But my point is that it doesn't really jive the same way you're talking about, because, like, I think if, for example, if we have an Xbox at home or whatever the hell console is now popular, you can obsess with it and you can hide it from your parents, or you can just play computer games, like, whatever, and they're like, whatever, do whatever you want. You're out of my hair. You know what I mean? So I guess in those circumstances, but this was 1980.
Yeah, no, I know that, but there were still consoles at home. People had Ataris at home.
We're not talking about Ataris.
No, I know.
And we're not talking about the effects that those cause. In fact, there are not as many scary stories that are associated with it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not talking about your average kid who, like, after school just goes to the arcade for, like, an hour, spends whatever quarters he has, hangs out with his friends, gets a Slurpee, and goes home. I'm talking about the kids, because just remember, there's a huge variety of people. I'm talking about the kids who, like, all day at school, they're just sitting there not doing well on the test, just thinking they can't wait to get to the arcade, and they go there and they stay there super late, and they have parents who don't give a damn about them.
That happened in the 90s too, and there is not one game that I recall causing these effects either. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Here we go. So going into the whole conspiracy is that the company that developed the game was called Zelta. It's a German name or word, I guess. This is a name that appeared on the monitor before you insert the coins. So it's kind of like that blank whatever screen. Right. Now I Googled the translation of Zelta, and the direct translation was deleting the mind. But other people have said that the translation is closer to saying sense delete or sensory deprivation. Most people would agree that it sounds like the creator of this name or whoever came up with it is a non-German speaker, like first language.
Okay, so it's not a particularly...
Right, because it's not really grammatically correct. So it's not really, yeah.
Yeah, well, let's be grammatically correct. Can we go back to what we were talking about earlier, Resident Evil, which was a game that came here. That doesn't make sense either.
So I guess my point is it's like they were trying to say like sensory deprivation, but it just came out weird.
Okay.
You know. Anyway. So I guess I'm going to go back to where did this come from? Like, what's the history? What's the origin? Like, why? What's going on here? What other evidence do we have of its existence? And some people say that they claim to have first heard of the game in 1994 on a computer communication system called Usenet. Usenet is one of the oldest computer network communication systems that was established in the 1980s, and it was like a precursor for the
message boards,
World Wide Web, right? So like it was like 10 years before, I think, or something like that.
I think for people who it's so hard to explain it. I grew up when Usenet was still viable. It's really hard to explain because nothing really functions that way because the internet functions very differently now.
Exactly. So it's just like one of the first to...
The best way to talk about it is imagine if you had Reddit in the 80s. Reddit works differently, but it was a way that people got news feeds, but also were able to have discussions and talk and everything like this. But it wasn't all stored in one location. It was kind of everywhere. You could have the original version of the dark web.
Right.
Where people could put anything out there and have a voice and everything, but they died for a good reason.
Right, and that's exactly where people have said it's been posted before. Or like they saw an image, because when it resurfaced again, they're like, hey...
There was a lot of conspiracy Usenet groups.
Right. So anyway, maybe this is where it was born. Maybe this is just where someone felt like they could post something finally.
Watch, if we could actually find it, just some guy's like, hey man, do you guys remember that game called like Polybutt or whatever? I used to get totally wasted at the Cade, and it was really fun, but I haven't seen it anywhere, man. Like, what is it? And some guys like, I've never heard of it, and people are like, it totally doesn't exist, and they tried to it's like they have a...
That's how rumors start, Jace.
I know, but like there's those fake video game myths about like a video game code where you could do something like, in Zelda, if you do this, blah 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 happens, and like
a demon will appear.
Link gets like 3 times as big and turns pink. It never happened. Like,
okay, that would be something I want to see. Well, so that is just speculation because there isn't anything concrete to prove, but that's just what people have said. Anyway, it is actually confirmed physical evidence that it did appear on February 6, 2000 on a website called coinup.org. Yeah, it's just like a video game database. I think you know about it. The whole website claims that the copyright release date of Polybius was 1981, but there isn't any record of the copyright. So it's just something, again, speculation, like where did he get this information? We're not really sure. The author of the post, Kurt Kohler, I think is his name, also reached out to GamePro magazine in 2003, to which they wrote about it in an article. And of course, this made it incredibly popular. Not surprisingly, once this happened, a lot of people came out of the shadows and claimed that they've seen the game themselves as well, or have some story, or said that they knew someone. You know, the crazies come out, like me. And of those people, a guy named Stephen Roach, who claimed he was an original programmer for the game. He goes on to say that he remembered working on the cutting-edge technology for what he thought was for a regular arcade game. Since he was somewhat close to the project, he learned firsthand that the game was causing strange effects on the kids that were playing on it, and that they were going to pull all the cabinets from the arcades. There's this documentary called Polybius, the video game that doesn't exist. It's on YouTube. Written and produced by Stuart Brown. Now this guy's crazy. He's really in depth. He actually reminded me a lot of you because there were like, he really broke everything down and he really wanted to explain a history of video games as well. So it's not just about, it's about Polybius, but it's also about like what video games in the 80s were like. And then he also goes and tries to debunk the whole thing. Go in knowing that he is not believing that Polybius is real, is all I'm saying. Okay. So like I said, he does extensive investigation and he actually reaches out to Stephen Roach, the programmer guy I was just talking about. And just to get more information, one for his video, his documentary, and just to like get answers, of course. He's kind of investigating, but Roach doesn't answer. So Brown went on a forum that Roach frequents and he looked up his IP address, as well as many of the people that were in the chat in which that Roach was having a conversation and trying to not explain, but talk about how his experience with the whole situation.
Sure.
And Brown found out that it also, a lot of the other users that were on the chat are from the same IP address as well. So it's kind of this assumption that maybe Roach is just trying to create a lot of hype or something.
Sure.
Now, Brown even goes as far to get Roach's general location. And with that information, he went on social media and found out who he really is, or who he thinks might be the real person behind Stephen Roach, which is crazy. A little stalkery, but that's okay. Anyway,
that's investigative reporting.
That's what is it? PI status here.
It's only a stalker. It's only a stalker if you're in love with them and you mean them harm.
I don't know. You never know what's going on behind people's heads. Behind people's heads. Beyond the brain.
Behind people's head is where the stalkers are.
That's where the stalker is.
They're just watching you. Thinking about making hair dolls or something creepy.
Oh my gosh, trying to take your pins. Okay. Okay, yeah. After he figured out where he was and like thinks that he knows who he is and stuff, he emails. Oh no. I can't remember how he reaches him the second time. The first time was email. I don't remember the second time. But he tells him, hey, is this your name? I had contacted you before, blah, blah, blah. And then 5 days later, Roach finally replied. And then Brown goes on and asks some questions. One being like, are you this person? Like, is this your real identity? And unfortunately, Roach is not very forthcoming. Like, he doesn't really...
He's elusive.
He's eluding the questions. He's kind of like dancing around it. He never really confirms or denies his identity. He
sounds like a liar.
He kind of just repeats saying like, whatever he has said before in even other forums. Like, I think what Brown ended up doing is that he goes back to past chats and realize that he's using the exact same kind of statements that he's used before. So it's like almost copy paste.
Yeah.
Like he's a robot or just like...
The OG copy pasta.
Right. Right. He's just like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. So anyway, it's just kind of weird. He doesn't really get anything from it. And he's like, whatever, I'm over it. Anyway, Polybius appeared again on April 2004 on a website called gooddealgames.com, which... So it had an odd-looking icon that was warning people who are wanting to download this game if they even dare to run it, and it would say, the warning sign, video game warning. The Polybius video game has been linked to impaired memory of psychological changes. Gameplay may cause epileptic seizures in susceptible individuals. Do you want to continue? Okay, or cancel. If you click yes, the game will disappear and the title of the game, year, company name, and the title, credit 0, at the bottom will appear. Then the logo, Polybius, will start flashing rapidly, and strange repeating sound frequencies will start to...
emanate?
There you go. I lost my words. I was like, anyway, I just went brain dead.
I thought you were like listening to something. You did Joey's smell the fart acting from Friends. You just like stopped and started looking around, and it took me a second to realize you were trying to think of the word because I thought you were like, what did she notice?
Just ended. I just went somewhere else, I think. Anyway, yes. So you can hear these sounds. That's what I'm saying. When you touch any key, the game will crash and you're giving another error message, which says, April Fools, send this message to a friend. So it was fake, unfortunately. So as people tried to investigate more and more people are putting these things out there, trying to deter us, trying to make us crazy.
I like how you're getting mad, but I'm just like, that's totally what I would do.
I know.
I'd be like, let's create a fake Polybius because...
Damn it, Chase. You're screwing up our investigation.
It's always been my dream to put out believable fake stuff just to see how people react. I mean, it's horrible when you go on YouTube and, like, people are waiting for, like, a new movie trailer, and then someone posts, like, oh, this trailer just got released, and then when you click on it, he's, like, spliced together, like, 10 movies, albeit badly, and he's like, yeah, this is totally the new Avengers movie, and it's got, like, cartoon bits in it, and you're just like, oh, my God.
It's like him in a garage.
And he has so many views, and you're like, I bet he's getting money for this, too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as long as it gives someone a good laugh. So anyway, like I said, people are putting crazy stuff out there.
Sure.
There are other sites that have released their own version of the game. So they're really saying, okay, this is not the original Polybius or anything, but
a new one.
I made one based on description of people's, what is the game about and what it looks like. Here we go. So, but of course, because it's a Polybius game, they're going to be very creepy about it. So sometimes if you go online and you try to look up some of these original video games that they've created, expect ominous warning signs, strange sounds embedded while you play, disturbing sounds, pre-recorded voices, subliminal messages, and more flashing ridiculous lights. Like, ridiculous what I'm talking about. Like, honestly, like when I was watching a video... For a second, I forgot I was watching a video game. I was so distracted. I'm like, wait, what are you even shooting at? I have no idea what's happening.
I'm totally imagining it like the original arcade machine. These like lights pop down from the top of it, and it was like a rave, like doo-doo-doo-doo.
I would just start dancing. If the beat is good, that's what I'm gonna do.
The game stops.
For a quarter, I'll dance for whatever, how long. Well, I'll just get someone to play it really well so I can keep the song going.
Watch, it was actually supposed to be like a karaoke machine, but they just accidentally put it with the rest of the arcades, and that's why like. No.
Polybius isn't a game; it's just like a series of lights. Of course, the true answer. Well, anyway, there are also a lot of YouTube videos, which I feel like if you haven't already created one, you will soon. That claim they have discovered the real Polybius cabinet, and the video is often low quality. It's very shaky.
There's a finger in the way.
And you're like...
Because you probably recorded it. Lily.
First of all, I probably did. It's like me recording you. So if you want bad recording to make it seem like Blair Witchy, I'm your girl. Yeah, it's very awful audio because, one, why would it be shaky? The cabinet is not moving. It's not like a UFO. I have no idea. All I'm saying is, anyone who wants to do research out there, do not be deterred. There's a lot of these types of things out there. But maybe you'll get down to it.
I'm totally imagining an amazing movie script where, like, some people find it in an old warehouse.
Oh, there's already a video of that like that.
They plug it in, but, like, this one, I'm imagining it stars, like, one of the people from, like, Stranger Things. But, like, Tom Hanks works for the government. And all this crazy stuff's happening. I already got it. Boom, it's gold.
I'm really curious how you're going to get Tom Hanks into this video, but I'll be there too. Okay, so there is a black and white image online that a lot of people really like holding on to because it does have a lot of interesting details about it that is kind of like a Frankenstein monster compilation of a lot of different parts of other video games that are even from different companies. So they can identify sections like, arcade game enthusiasts have already done this and say, well, this coin slot thing is from this company and it was used often. And then this like bottom curve thing is from so like it really, whoever may or may not have made it up is pretty at least well versed and was, good enough to like assume these different parts from different ones. So it wasn't just like a carbon copy of one game or one cabinet. Do you know what I mean? But I guess maybe why they hold on to it too is that it kind of makes sense. Like if it was the CIA, maybe they were trying to be undescript, like not saying, hey, maybe another company might accidentally want to fix maybe all their machines in the arcade. And when they look at it, they're like, oh, that's not one of ours. It doesn't have this or that, or it must be some other company. Sure. So I don't know. It's just kind of like this whole concept of like still trying to blend in by being everything. Dun, dun, dun. Now there's this other video I saw online, And it's just like a really short one. It was like 8 minutes or something like that. It's called Polybius Behind the Urban Legend. But they did interview a guy named Brian Dunning, who is a host for his own podcast called Skeptoid. And I'm assuming it's all about him trying to debunk things, because one of the things that he likes doing is researching a lot of things like urban legends and whatnot, and just trying to figure out the truth or where it came from, more source historical.
In all
research.
manner of
exactly.
genres, right?
I'm not sure. Like, I didn't really look into the podcast myself, but
it's not specifically video game urban legends.
Oh, no. It's like everything.
It's broad.
Oh, okay. yeah, if that's what you meant. Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, one of the most fascinating things that he found was that everything that leads to evidence towards the existence of Polybius are actually true. So a lot of these arguments that people have used really did happen. Mm-hmm. For example, in the 1980s, there were people actually collapsing and feeling very sick while playing video games like Tempest and Asteroids.
Yeah, Tempest represent. It's one of my favorite games of all time.
But that was quickly debunked. Well, not debunked. It was later established that the reason was because these people were playing it for 28 hours straight.
That's what I was telling you earlier.
In an attempt to break a world record.
Okay, well, I didn't say they were. I just thought they were insane, but
right.
Well, still insanity.
I'm sure there's some people out there, but like 28 hours straight, the place does have to shut down.
Against me. All right, keep going.
The other one is the government conspiracy theory. So there was actually, like, I think 10 days after someone was playing Asteroids for like a world record or whatever had collapsed, 10 days after that, the FBI agents actually did raid multiple arcade establishments because they were illegally gambling.
Oh, absolutely.
So that we knew that was happening, but like, it's just kind of this whole, do you know what I'm saying? It's just all accumulating here.
Well, and there's got to be a lot of illegal activity that's happening in a lot of these arcades, like you know, you have a bunch of teenagers and kids, obviously, but you have a bunch of teenagers in there. It's a great front for people who run the arcade to also sell drugs or other legal things. And also some arcades, depending on how it was, they leased machines, and the idea was that they split the earnings of the machines, and maybe that they were opening up the machines when they weren't supposed to and siphoning off quarters, and that's a laundering. Like, or that's not laundering, it's like lying, it's embezzlement, things like that. Yeah, so totally makes sense that they were going to raid arcades.
But it only fuels this whole like conspiracy theory.
Because they were there.
Also, it doesn't help that the government did use video games for their training exercises, like Battlezone, which I guess was for Atari.
Oh, well, it was also in the arcade. Battlezone is awesome.
And Doom.
Well, but that wasn't until the 90s.
Still, though, but I'm just saying, like, well, in the 90s is when you really started hearing about Polybius. So it just kind of like this, if it was a conspiracy theory, this just almost fueled it, or rather gave ideas.
Yeah, no, but there's a long history of that. Even in the early 2000s, the U.S. Army actually contracted the company to make a game called America's Army, which was supposed to be like an online game that was supposed to be very realistic and kind of teach you a lot about how the military or the army really works. And the thing is, it was actually a really good game. And they distributed it for free. It was like the most expensive recruiting method we had at that point. And it was really good. Everyone I knew, including me, we had the game. We played it online. We did all that.
Was
it
it
great.
Really fun?
It was really cool. Yeah, it was kind of like a pre-Call of Duty Modern Warfare before that happened. It was really good.
All right. Well, there you go. So another thing, there is a video game called Polyplay. It was created in East Germany in 1985. It was a cabinet that held actually multiple games, but it had faulty hardware. The coin slot design malfunctioned too many times, but the arcades kept the system because it wasn't from a large corporation and it was just like state owned, I guess.
Sure.
It just made it easy to just keep or whatever. At some point, many places actually deactivated the coin slot because it was just too much trouble and just made it free. So people actually went there and played and had a good time with it, which actually did end up drawing good, big, giant crowds. So maybe more business, who knows? But the whole idea of being obsessed with something kind of fueled that as well. Anyway, eventually, and this is really strange to me, but in 1989, just after the Berlin Wall fell, Polyplay cabinets were removed immediately and destroyed. I don't know what that was about. But there are still some standing, and they are displayed in a museum in Germany.
So, but the Polyplays were in Germany, right?
They were in Germany, yeah.
So what you're telling me is this is some KGB secret conspiracy where they were like...
And they try to pin it on the CIA, but it's really the KGB.
Maybe the coin door mechanism was this complicated computer that was like scanning people's fingers, but it was designed by the Soviets, so it didn't work very well. And, and that's why it kept malfunctioning.
They're like, damn it, Bob, why didn't you fix the coin slot? Anyway.
Polyplay, huh? I gotta look that up.
Yeah, so Polyplay, like I said, it had like a lot of imitation games. So it had a almost very similar Pac-Man game, things like that. It had like a hunting game. I didn't really look into them extensively, but it looked like it had a lot of cool stuff. I don't know.
I thought you were going to tell me hidden in one of the games was Polybius, and I was just like, what?
Oh my god, that would have been awesome. Maybe.
That's where I thought you were going, and you're like, the coin door that it turned out to be a Polybius machine that's been repurposed, but all those things are malfunctioning because of all like the crazy government stuff. Yeah.
No, I guess what I meant to say is like these inspirations, like why this entire Polybius
all things leading around to it.
Right, okay. And like how it came about, and plus this is, in my opinion, a little suspicious, but they also said, well, they had to destroy him, but they actually used many of the parts because they're trying to salvage things. But maybe that's true, maybe not. But why this game only? I don't know. It's also important to note that there were quite a few 80 games that were long forgotten in the 80s.
Absolutely.
So, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, there was just so many arcades at the time, and it never went anywhere, so it died with the arcade.
Well, and there were a lot of companies that, may have been fly-by-night that were trying to cash in on the arcades, which was a really lucrative...
Right.
It was a lucrative field, so, you were going to have companies that just appeared overnight, and they would just make a few arcade machines, and everything inside wasn't mass-produced or anything. It was all done by hand on breadboard, circuit boards, and stuff like this. And they would have painted their own arcade cabinets and put them in places, and they would have easily been pulled and repurposed. And that's also, if I'm not mistaken, one of the theories.
It actually is. And the reason why it's one of the theories is because not just the fact that Polybius might have been a fly-by-night, like you mentioned, but remembering a lot of these games would have been difficult for people.
Absolutely.
And so a mixture of these games may have actually contributed to what they think is a false memory of Polybius itself.
Oh, totally.
So that's also just one perspective of that as well.
The video game crash of the early 80s helped a lot of these get forgotten and destroyed.
Exactly. And like all disappeared and just all these things. Except Polybius disappeared in 1981, which would have been...
before all that.
Right. Now, this is just like a random note I had to put in here because I was like, what in the hell? There is a game that I learned during my research called Uncle Poo.
Sweet.
It's a game. It's like an aerial viewpoint where you see this little man figure running through a maze, killing creatures and breaking down walls with his poo.
What?
He literally turns around and flings poo as his attack, like out of his butt. Sorry, I could barely say that.
Everything I'm picturing is probably way more high fidelity than anything in 1981 would have looked like. So I
don't understand this game is all I'm saying. But
sweet.
Anyway, there's a video on it on YouTube. You guys can go ahead and look it up.
This is what I'm gonna do right after we record. I need to learn about Uncle Poo.
Jeez. Okay. More influences in the media would have been obviously movies. So like I said, Tron, and there was another movie called The Last Starfighter.
Oh, that movie is incredible.
Okay, because I'm just going to go ahead and give my version of synopsis when I read about it. It is so ridiculous. So it came out in 1984. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know out there. It's about a teenage boy that lives in a trailer park and learns that he didn't get a scholarship to go to college, and so he basically thinks his entire life is shit. But the only thing that he's really, really good at is playing this arcade game called Starfighter. Well, he ends up getting the highest score record, and soon after he's approached by the creator of Starfighter. For whatever reason, this kid gets into this guy's limo, because that's normal, and gives off and they drive off. Well, very quickly the kid realizes the limo is actually a spaceship. The creator guy, which I guess now makes him an alien, so this alien guy,
he is an alien,
then so stupid, then reveals that to the kid that his planet needs help, and it turns out that the game Starfighter was just a test to find people that had quote unquote the gift to help fight in this intergalactic space war. Oh, and if you're thinking, well, what about his parents? They're gonna be really worried. Well, don't worry. alien dude has it covered because they have like an android replica of this kid in his place.
And it's a very creepy replica. It is him, but there's moments. No, the reason it makes sense is the people who are fighting in this space war, they fight with these really impressive jets. And so they made a video game that's just like flying those jets, and they needed to find out they were trying to find people who could fly them really well.
I understand. It just like kind of reminded me of Star Wars with like the Force or something. But
for anyone out there who's like, I mean, everyone out there who thinks that's the dumbest thing in the world, just keep thinking that's fine. It's cool. It's not that great. But I really liked it because I grew up with it. And it had like some of the first computer animation and whatnot. It's a kid's movie. So you have to remind yourself it's a kid's movie. And it's a perfectly good kid's movie.
I just think like whoever wrote the Wikipedia synopsis for it it gave me a wild ride. I'm like, I'm sorry. He just flew in a spaceship from a limo, and then like his mom has to deal with an android. What if the kid dies? Like the android isn't going to age. Does it self-destruct? Like what's going on here? Anyway.
Well, I think they were worried about the war more than they were about the kid's parents. That was just to get the kid to be willing to disappear for a little while.
But this kid is willing to disappear is what I'm saying. Like he's or was he completely kidnapped? What's going on?
No, he went willingly.
Ish. I'm assuming.
But you have to know, and this is important. This is super important because you brought this up, and you had never even heard of it.
No.
I'm making you watch it.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's going to happen.
Well, I'm on VR too, so I'm ready.
We might even watch it tonight.
Let's do it.
Yeah, get you nice and drunk. So I can take advantage of you by watching a movie you don't want to see.
I like that's you're like, I'm going to get my girl drunk tonight. I'm going to make her watch some real nerdy shit. It's going to be crazy.
That's what happens when you're a nerd in your 30s. You're like, I like it when my wife gets drunk because we can watch the best crappy movies.
Oh my gosh. This is actual facts.
So is the reason you brought that up because he thinks that people's ideas were derived from this plot?
Exactly, because it came out, when did I say?
I think it was 84. It was right before I was born.
I think you're right. It was 1984.
Yeah,
okay.
Me and my brother.
I'm like trying to look at my notes over here.
Me and my brother used to watch that. Like everyone grew up with Star Wars, we did too. But we also loved watching Tron, The Last Starfighter, and Explorers.
So all these, like I said, all these things are just kind of, and I'm not trying to debunk anything, but you can kind of see where all these ideas came from and
the
why
collective unconscious all combining
and why
this
it fueled it, because like all these false memories or like whatever is going on. However, still doesn't explain like maybe like the physical effects, people's personal stories, people that keep like saying and adamant about it. You know, how can you dispute that, I suppose?
Well, especially in arcades. At the time, we were still learning. So nowadays, we know a lot of the things that cause seizures. So most video games avoid them. But video games that can't have warnings now saying this can cause epilepsy. But in 1981, this was still pretty new. We knew what epilepsy was, but we were still kind of understanding what video games could do, not just television signals. So I absolutely believe people were having seizures and epilepsy, but I have a feeling it was because we just knew so little about it. It's not a big conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what these things like came from, but they also say, you know, like amnesia without the seizures, night terrors, you know, even suicide. That was a really big one, but suicide has always been like an issue with younger people as well. So associating with the game without direct evidence is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But acting strange, you know, like just things like that. I think the hallucination thing was like the one that got me. I'm like, I really don't want to play a game
but is that
where I start hearing women crying.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Okay, and if that stuff was happening, that's really sketchy and freaks me out.
I'm out.
But how many people were imagining this, or is it just one story?
So the reason why it's so spectacular or almost ridiculous is because it was only out for like 2 months, and all these things happened. And that wouldn't have been enough time for it to cause like such a hysteria or like all these kind of like physical effects. And that's why it would have been an extreme situation, like experiments or whatever.
Can I pose a small alternate theory real quick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if it was such a big deal and so chaotic and so much craziness was happening, why did everyone forget about it?
Not necessarily forgot, but just there was nothing else to
But you remember things like that.
You're right.
It's like the Macarena. The Macarena's totally dead.
Okay, that Macarena lasted more than 2 months. I heard that damn song for like years on the radio.
Yeah, at times it feels like it lasts an eternity.
Like it really hasn't left my mind, actually.
But I mean, it seems like everyone forgot that. But everyone remembered how terrible E.T. the video game was back in the 80s. And I'm like, all right.
People only talked about it after, like, resurfaced or something like that. Like, someone started talking about it, too. So it's just one of those things. Like, I don't know if people didn't talk about it, but you have to remember, again, this was around 1994, I think is when I said, Usenet, when it would have popped, where people can actually start communicating. It was like Portland, Oregon. Like, it was like in the suburbs where it appeared. It wasn't in a big city.
And I guess it would have made sense that back then they didn't have, not many people had access to a way to document this, and over a decade it's easy
and
to
especially if you were a kid, you're like, did I just fucking like have a stroke the entire time?
True.
Like, what just happened? Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, all these things, like, if you really put in context what's going on and really delve into, like, perspective-wise, it's interesting.
Totally.
Anyway. Speaking of Usenet, that actually came up again. There was also, like, in the forums that they had their puzzle that was called Publius Enigma. Does that sound familiar to you?
No.
Okay. It's kind of a big deal, I guess, at the time. Because it was supposedly connected to Pink Floyd. And it was, like, a hidden meaning in their album called Division Bell. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go to alt.music.Pink Floyd, there are, like, a slew of cryptic clues, but nothing that really came out of it. So it's really just, like, people trying to figure out this puzzle or whatever. Then, classic Pink Floyd, during a concert, actually displayed in large lights, Enigma Publius, and people went crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like, there's hidden messages. And the reason why I only bring this up is Publius is close to Polybius, and they think it's connected. I mean, people have literally probably have, like, red yarn all over their room trying to connect all these things because it just...
Or done a lot of acid.
It is Pink Floyd. You're not wrong. But I think, like, I don't know. I had to bring it up because it just kept popping up in my research.
Totally.
And so, like, if anyone wants to connect that,
this story is a roller coaster of crazy.
I don't even know where I am anymore. But yeah, so, like, you know, it's really in our culture now. There's no getting away from it, people. There's also actually an episode of The Simpsons where it's an Easter egg. It's like in the opening scene, I think, where Bart is in an arcade in season like 18, episode 3, which aired in 2006, where he's approaching an arcade and right next to it is a Polybius machine.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. I know.
I mean, what has Simpsons not done?
What haven't they done? I don't know. They're pretty amazing. So aside from Polybius, there are other urban legends that are associated to video games. So I think also that is just like, it might be one of many. Who knows? Although Polybius, I would say, is arguably one of the most interesting because it has such like history and like connection. Like whoever created this urban legend really kind of did their research, and whoever wanted to fuel it are like video game enthusiasts and just truly love the urban legend because they're obsessed with the entire concept. But anyway, other urban legends that I was going to talk about are like this haunted Zelta cartridge that apparently exists out there.
What?
I know. I had to look into it. This isn't even part of my research, but I'm going to tell you a real quick like side story. So the haunted Zelta cartridge. So there's this kid that purchased a video game, or the cartridge, Zelda, from a garage sale. Now, at first he wasn't going to buy it. He was actually just browsing, and then he looked at it and he's like, oh, hey. And he's like, how much is it? And the guy's like, oh, it's free. So a kid used to own it, but I guess I just don't really know what to do with it. You can have it. And he's like, thanks. So he takes it home, and he notices while he's carrying it that it's getting heavier and heavier, or just like heavier than normal. It's not the Bell Witch where she gets heavier and heavier near fire. Anyway, so he takes it home and he ends up playing it for hours because it's Zelda. It's fun. Anyway, he starts noticing that the game is not referring to the character as Link, but to his own name.
Okay.
And he notices that the character starts staring at the screen, like back at him, just randomly. Like, would stand there and just like stare at him instead of interacting with the game. Now, as time passes, he also starts like changing himself. He starts getting overcome with grief. He's just really like depressed or whatever, but he still plays the game anyway.
So puberty?
Probably. No, he's actually, I think he was actually supposed to be a student in college.
Oh, maybe late puberty. Okay.
Yeah. Late puberty. Maybe. But anyway, so as time passes, like I said, one day right before he ends a session, a Link bursts into flames in the video game, and the words appear on the screen, "Your turn." Now, right after this happens, more strange things start to occur.
Okay.
Now, for example, he's hearing, I didn't write a lot of this down, but just from memory, he starts hearing strange voices coming down from his dorm hallway. He hears knocking, he hears, all these, he feels like he's going crazy. He's just hearing things all the time. So, driven mad, thinking, this game is obviously effed up. I have to go back to this garage salesperson's house and figure out, where did this game come from? So he goes back to the house, and when he does, he finds out that the house is empty.
Weird.
So he can't even talk to the person who supposedly knew the person that owned it. So, just real quick as the story goes, eventually the student disappears, the kid that was playing the game.
Sure.
And this entire time, he's, blogging this experience. So I think you can probably read it somewhere, creepypasta,
sure.
You know what I mean, kind of situation. And the last entry is actually from his dorm roommate who says, oh, he's fine. He's in a better place. Kind of last entry. So it's really creepy.
Sounds like a no sleep.
It sounds like a no sleep that
one.
I wish I wrote.
No, it's I like it. It's a good one. I also don't believe it for 1 second.
I don't either.
But it is a good, fun story.
But my point is that Polybius is not the only standing urban legend or crazy story of a video game. There's another one called...
I think just making it Zelda really ruined how scary it could be. Because it's Zelda. And Zelda's a very playful, colorful... kind of game.
I think maybe it was trying to pick a game that a lot of us knew and really well liked, perhaps, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so there's I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. There's another one called Petscop or Petscop. Not really sure how you say it. It's called it's spelled Petscop, so pets and then a cop. Anyway.
Or Petscop.
Yes. How could I not know? So there is actually a YouTube channel called Petscop where you follow a person playing this game, and I think that's where the story unfolds. It's supposed to be a lot of weird things that happen while he plays the game.
Okay.
And you can follow him play this game that doesn't exist, but it's supposed to be this long lost PlayStation game that he only owns. So you can go on YouTube and go on a deep, deep hole of conspiracy if you like.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, today... What is Polybius today? Well, Polybius is everything I already told you. However, PlayStation actually did release a Polybius game in 2017.
Nice.
It's very 1880s inspired. 1980s inspired.
I was seriously, was it sock puppets and gear shifted?
It was a lot of smoke and lights.
Yeah.
No. So in the 1980s, it was very 1980s retro inspired. It looks actually kind of fun. I will say, warning, there is a ton of fucking flashing.
Well, there'd have to be.
So if you are
and I mean, they're totally able because like you said earlier, the Polybius was supposed to be copyright 1981, but there was no filed copyright.
Right.
Which... going back to what I said earlier, would suggest it was a company that was flying by night and creating just a few machines, and they weren't going to waste the money registering that copyright.
Right. What would have stopped them, really?
But it means it's an open copyright, and it's a name so many people know, so it's begging for money. It's a genius move.
I think it might be copywritten already, and I mean even before PlayStation, so I don't know if they're paying royalties either. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. I think it is actually taken now because there's a company or something. I can't remember during my research what I read, but someone developed something and they said it's the first copywritten Polybius. But anyway, I went to a lot of weird places on the internet when I was researching that. Obviously, when you're going to conspiracy theories, you're just going to find out a lot of different things. So we really need to get some
good antivirus on your computer. Stat.
Girl. All right. Who knows how many viruses I have now? Polybius related. Thanks, Polybius. Actually, it should be considered now an STD. Did you get Polybius? Yeah. I want a really bad conspiracy binge, deep dive.
Oh, man, he's got to do so much laundry because the Polybius got him something fierce right now.
Man, I got to clean my computer. It's got the Polybius. Who knows? It'll catch on.
So, well, it's a better name than the company. What was the company called again?
Zenith Lotion, I think.
Zenith Lotion?
Yeah.
Sounds like something you put on your skin or else you get the hose again.
I try. Don't be slow. Okay, but it's spelled with an S, but I said Z because it's German. I don't know. Zenith Lotion. That's how I heard people say it online.
Okay, could be Zenith Lotion.
But it's weird spelling.
I have no idea.
So I don't know how to say it actually. I mean, it's a made up word. Hold on.
All words are made up.
I hate you.
What movie was that from? It was amazing.
Was it The Office?
It might have been The Office. Yeah, it might have been The Office.
Yeah.
All words are made up.
All words are made up.
It's such a good reply. Gotta go through your files.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, whoa. So you're saying lotion, like
Lotion. No, it's like slow. Like
Zeneslotion.
Or Zeneslotion.
Zeneslotion?
Zeneslotion.
Wow, that is a weird word.
I have no idea how to say it. But I gave it my try, and from what I think I heard what the guy said. So,
so what I heard and what I'm reading totally looks like something we would see on a road sign when we're walking around Germany. It's like, oh yeah, that's what this road's called.
And it just means cat, and I'm like, God damn it. Yeah, Germany was hard. Okay, so like I was going to say, yeah, today, PlayStation, there's a game out there now that you guys can play. And I think, if I recall correctly, it does have subliminal messages.
Oh, they would have to. They're trying to...
But like the messages are like, it reminds a player of the virtues of a nice cup of tea. So I'm not.
So that means it was developed by some British people.
Well, maybe, but like I think it's really funny, and I am not lying when I say this, but I was watching the video, like the 2017 PlayStation version of Polybius, and I'm drinking my tea, and I'm like, this is fine, and I actually finish it, and I'm still researching, and then I go back to the video because I want to like know more about it. And I'm not joking, I got a craving for tea. And then I learned later about the subliminal message. So all I'm trying to say, Chase, is watch out because I'm easy to manipulate.
So I need to look into subliminal messages and so I can just start saying things to you like in the middle of the night.
Apparently I'm just like...
You want nachos?
I mean, I don't know. I had a second cup of tea and I never do that.
You never do that.
Yeah, here we go.
Sometimes
Thanks, Polybius.
Sometimes you don't even finish your first cup of tea.
I know, and I did, and I was like thirsty for another one, man. I'm telling you. Maybe there's subliminal messages about drinking, because what's that about?
Isn't being drunk...
And beer.
Isn't being drunk just like one big subliminal message?
It's just like me. It's myself giving a message every time. That's all it is.
All right, so I had seen the documentary a long time ago, and I admit I don't think I paid as much attention as I should have, but I was intrigued by it. And I've seen a lot of other things too, and I kind of, my own personal theory was that because I've known enough about companies that were manufacturing their own, sometimes people were manufacturing counterfeit machines, like they're making their own version of Pac-Man and Galgan. They had to make them from scratch.
Right.
And they would try to make money by putting them in gas stations or in other arcades and everything like so they paint their own carts. Some of them would get caught. Some of them even got hired by the original company because they did such a good job to make new games, blah, blah, blah. That I have this theory that there was a company that probably manufactured like 20 Polybius machines. And they went out there for a short period of time. Maybe it was a good game. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe they got caught. Maybe the FBI found out that they were doing something illegal, came in, pulled the machines.
Well, I mean, there was that. I mean, that did happen quite often.
And then they just disappeared, and it was forgotten time. I do think it's really fun to play with the idea that it was like some experiment. That's pretty cool.
I had a ton of fun researching.
Yeah.
I think it's because I actually learned a lot. Whereas a lot of my ghost stories, I'm like, oh yeah, another EVP or this or that, and I'm not bored of them or anything, but the contents aren't new to me or like unheard of. So when I find something very different, it's just something. I guess it was more for my not benefit, but like for me to learn. I didn't know that much about this world. I know now way more about 1980 cabinet arcade games than I probably should. And
you never know enough.
I guess not. I still don't think I even scratched the surface, to be honest, because people get really, really obsessed over it. But I don't know. I had a lot of fun. And the fact that it might have like made people crazy. And plus, MK Ultra has itself an entire catalog of conspiracy theories that are stemming from it. So this is probably not the last time. I know it's not the last time.
And we know that stuff does happen
MK
and it
Ultra.
is real. So why is it that bizarre to go one extra step and be like, this video game might have been in the same vein? Maybe not the same people, obviously, but same idea.
But it's unique enough. So like,
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like the other game that I talked about where I was saying like, oh, the haunted Zelda cartridge. I mean, it has nothing to do with the government. It's just like haunted. You know, it's like another ghost. But I don't know. It's cool.
Well, that was a good one.
I think so.
So I don't know if I'm scared because I knew everything about it.
Are you not entertained?
I am entertained. I'm just not fearful at the moment.
Okay, that's fair.
But for those of you who do believe that there's this government conspiracy that was trying to create a video game that manipulated and fucked with the brains of teenagers and kids, that is a scary thought.
That is a scary thought.
So, I don't know. I think we both need new drinks.
Yes.
So
you need another sparkle and I need another beer.
So it's time to refresh our drinks. Everyone get another round of whatever you're drinking, be it beer, water, or
tea.
Or tea. Ooh, or tea.
I put a subliminal message in here of tea. I'm just kidding. I didn't. I don't know how to do that.
And come right back, because I got a story for you.
Yay! Okay, guys. I hope you guys are refreshed because I think Chase has a story for us today.
I've got a great story for you guys.
Yay!
So, as if you didn't know, it's time for an end of episode encounter.
I had to join in on that one.
All right, so I just discovered this little phenomena today. Just today. I had no idea what it was, and there were so many times I should have found out about it, but I didn't. All right, it's one of those things that normally I would dismiss as just being like a total fabrication or bullshit, or that it was something super easily explainable. Yet, as I kept reading about it, I got way more intrigued by it.
Nice.
So tell me, guys, and Lily specifically, but like everyone listening, have you ever heard of angel hair?
Angel hair?
Yeah.
Like the spaghetti?
And I'm not talking about the spaghetti. I knew you were going there. I knew, because that was my first thought when I read it. I'm like, you mean angel hair spaghetti? Which, any of you guys who don't know what angel hair spaghetti is, it's spaghetti, but worse. Like, I love spaghetti.
I'm not fond of it. Yeah.
They're like super thin spaghetti strands, and it's a worse texture. It's a worse way to eat it. And I swear, it's probably just in my mind. Every time I eat angel hair spaghetti, it's like the pasta tastes worse too. I don't know. I figured it was all made out of the same stuff, but maybe they make it differently. But anyway, not angel hair spaghetti. I'm talking about the angel hair phenomena.
Okay.
I'm talking about the spider web-like stuff that appears suddenly in the sky.
Okay.
And lands and falls on plants, other objects, and everything.
What the hell are you talking about?
Right?
I've never heard of this.
Now, I've never seen it in person before.
Where has this occurred?
All over the planet.
Okay, well, here we go.
So I hadn't heard about it. And even the Wikipedia page, because there aren't that many pictures that exist of it, the Wikipedia page doesn't even have a picture of it. They have a picture of something else. They say, this is kind of what people describe.
Like a rendition? Or like a
It's literally a spider web they put a picture of.
Oh, okay.
Like over a plant. All right. So I hadn't heard about it, but it would be really easy for a lot of people if they just see one or two of these to dismiss it as spider webs.
Right.
But it's possibly not. All right. So I had some questions, particularly, what the hell are we specifically talking about? Because I just heard spiderweb-like things. So I'm just going to read the Wikipedia definition because it's just out there. So
okay, let's do it.
Quote, angel hair or silicious cotton is a sticky, fibrous substance reported in connection with UFO sightings or manifestations of the Virgin Mary.
Oh, that took a weird turn.
Right? It has been described as being like a cobweb or a jelly.
Ew.
End quote. All right, so first off, let's hit the first word.
Did you say salacious?
Salicious.
Oh.
Yeah, I said, so first part, let's talk about this word, because I didn't know what it meant. So salicious means it contains silica.
Ah.
All right. Let's also talk about the Virgin Mary for a second.
Because why not?
We're actually going to get to a story later that kind of explains why maybe it has to do with it, because this is a weird phenomena.
If you explain it with the Virgin Mary appearing, I'm just going to be really excited.
No, there's no stories in which the Virgin Mary appears.
Okay.
But it is something, it is an occurrence that people have seen, obviously, in Europe and other things, where it has been associated with being appearances of the Virgin Mary. Whereas now, no one says that. Everyone says UFOs. Or scientists don't, obviously.
Okay, sure.
All right. So, jelly. They said it was a cobweb, but jelly. Now, I've touched cobwebs and spider webs. They ain't like jelly at all. They feel like Well, they feel like a thread from like a
Sticky.
sewing machine
Yeah.
that's kind of tactile, and if you rub it, it's kind of bumpy actually. Yeah, I know it's supposed to be like silky and smooth, but it's not that smooth.
I truly don't think I've ever tried feeling it in my hands. Immediately after it gets on my body, I'm like, one, already in a different dimension because I'm freaking out, but like I'm trying to pull it off me.
Well,
so I guess you have. I mean, I don't know.
So the time I really played with it is we once had a spider in my parents' kitchen, and we didn't notice it. Like we had gone to bed. This is when I was like a teenager.
I remember the story. Yeah.
And when we woke up, we went to the kitchen. All of a sudden, I just see a spider, and it looks like it's just hanging from the ceiling in the kitchen. But when you changed your angle, you saw it had built overnight a giant web that I'm going to say was, what would you say? It was like 2 feet across, a foot and a half across.
2 feet, yeah.
And it was a gorgeous web. It was like the kind people draw. You're like, webs don't look like that. They're a lot sloppier. It was a perfect web. And this spider was huge and bright and orange. And I even took a picture. And we had to kill the spider because it was a bit aggro.
It's in my space.
But this web was like right, and we had to get rid of it. And at this point, I was like, well, the spider's dead. And man, did I want to play with that web to find out. Like, I want to see how strong they were and everything. I mean, I've been a Spider-Man fan since I was a kid. Spiders are cool. So I was feeling with it. I was trying to see how strong it was and everything. And holy cow, did it feel completely different than I thought. Like cobwebs that you see, it's a completely different thing.
I felt cobwebs, yeah.
Yeah, they're
not
nothing
by choice.
alike. Yeah. So, jelly. It's nothing like any spyweb I've seen. It allegedly looks kind of like fine, silky hair, hence the name hair in angel's hair. But not exactly like a spider's web either. So that's why it's called hair, but why is it angel's hair? Well, apparently most of the recorded occurrences of angel's hair was it being witnessed as falling from the sky, kind of like snowflakes.
Ew.
That's right. Weird cotton spiderweb things
Hair.
falling from the sky.
Now, I do know, like, don't baby spiders kind of, like,
And we're actually going to go to that. That's actually a major thing to talk about.
Spin a little thing
Balloons.
so they can fly away.
Yeah. That's actually
From
a
the
huge
nest?
thing we're going to talk about.
Cool. Okay.
But before we get there, this is one of the weird parts. So these things would fall and hit the ground, but then they would dissolve shortly after.
That's not...
I couldn't get a good estimate on exactly what they meant by quickly. Did they mean a few minutes, a few hours? Because the disparity changes how crazy or not crazy it is. But the more I researched it, I found out there's a range.
Okay.
One instance in Melbourne, Australia, or Melbourne rather, mentioned that a captured piece of the silk dissolved completely within 1 hour. But one thing we know is that spider webs in general don't degrade quickly. They take a while.
Quick question, just for like my visualization. Is it always through a section of land? Is it like a tree that gets attacked? Like what am I looking at here?
It's everywhere. And I'm going to get to that too. There's a huge occurrence of it.
Because right now I'm just thinking like a tiny little
It's landed
petal.
on people, it's landed on the ground, it's landed on trees. So, spiderwebs often stick around for an exceptionally long period of time. Even though there's variety in the kinds of silk that different spiders produce, it's a very strong material. They're sort of protein fiber with beta sheet crystal fibrils in it. I mean, they're designed to stick around.
They've tested them. Have samples?
No, we're talking about spiderwebs.
Oh, I was like, what the hell? Okay, gotcha.
I mean, and there's a reason you can see spiderwebs that have been long abandoned sitting there, and they've sometimes been there for months, if not years. Like, they stick around.
Yeah.
They are very strong. The most known and most witnessed occurrence took place in Aleron, France in 1952. Mass amounts of people witnessed angel hair falling from the sky. The weather was described as nearly cloudless. Most of this angel hair was described as being like snowflakes in terms of its size. So you have a mostly clear sky, and it's just kind of coming through everywhere. 2 years later in Venice, two guys, Gennaro Lucetti and Pietro Lastrucci, allegedly witnessed what they described as, quote, shiny spindles, end quote, that sped across the sky. And in their wake was a trail of angel hair that fell to the earth.
Wow.
In 1961, at Mount Hale Station in Western Australia, 12 round flying objects were seen in the sky. They left behind a trail of white, quote, streamers, end quote, that allegedly crumbled and dissolved when they were picked up or landed on people.
Ew.
Streamers would suggest long,
very
ropey-like things.
Yeah.
But I want to go to my favorite reported occurrence of angel hair. Do you remember, like, 7 or so episodes ago, I talked about a bizarre sky spectacle that occurred above Nuremberg back in the old 1561?
What's up, 1561?
Yeah, all those weird lights, colors, moving shapes in the sky, all that fun stuff. Yeah, well, apparently they also witnessed angel hair following the occurrence.
Oh my god. Did you even talk about it that time?
No, I didn't.
I didn't think so.
I'm assuming it's moments like these with their much more devout Christian beliefs that helped establish the relationship between angel hair and sightings of the Virgin Mary as being a religious experience. Because if you remember, that occurrence was being tied as being a very Christian religious experience.
Right.
They weren't saying aliens. I don't know why my research in the Nuremberg occurrence didn't turn up this fun little fact. But anyway, I'd like to take credit for deeply intertwined narrative between all of my stories, but it's not there. I'm not that smart. So let's talk about some theories and explanations about this, because there are so many occurrences of this. It's ridiculous. Like, how have I never heard of this? Because it happens all the time. And so many of them are in the 20th century. It is guaranteed that at least some of them are caused by spiders. Plenty of spiders, such as the Linyphidae, if I'm pronouncing it right, Linyphidae, are documented as creating little web balloons and flying away. And I'm pretty sure that is what happened at the end of the Charlotte's Web cartoon that I watched as a kid. Yeah. I just remember all like the babies kind of like flying away.
Bye. Yeah. And you're like, what the hell?
Sometimes these spiders do it in mass as well. Large groups of them do it at a single time. It would explain plenty of the reported incidents that all they were witnessing was lots of these spiders floating through the sky.
Yeah.
This species of spider and this family is known for being poorly researched and badly documented compared to many other species of spiders. It's not because there's not interest, there just isn't as much information as in a lot of others, which could help explain how the little we know about the reproductive cycles and movement cycles of these spiders was not obviously used as the explanation during a lot of these reported incidents. I mean, at the time, a lot of people didn't even know spiders could do this or whatnot. So if you just think, a lot of these could be spiders just floating through. It should be noted, though, during a lot of these instances, no spiders were ever reported, like when they landed on people or when they found. So the spiders could be really small.
I was going to say, have you ever seen baby spiders? They're teeny tiny and translucent. Well, the ones I've seen.
So some of the sightings of the alleged angel hair in Australia and New Zealand have resulted in analyses that did, in fact, identify them as spider webs. Either tests were done on the substance proving that it was a spider web, or they were found in conjunction with one of the many spiders involved. Like, when they found them, they actually found spiders on them. There were actually quite a few of these moments in which they were able to find out and say, like, yes, we know these are spiders, these are spiders. So there were occurrences where, at this point now, enough of it happened in Australia and the New Zealand area that scientists are very happy to say all of the occurrences in those areas were spiders.
Yeah.
So we can interpret this as either these cases in which they were able to prove that they were spiders weren't actually angel hair, and they were just spider webs, or we can assume that all of them were spiders.
Okay.
At all times, and that angel hair is nothing but spiders. However,
I mean, that's just kind of scary in its own right.
A little bit. Spiders flying through the sky, right? However, it should be stated that all of these sightings may not have been equal because there's so many differences and disparities in all the sightings. They don't always agree with each other. One of the alleged sightings described the unknown substance as dry and oily, not sticky, and that the strands were 30 feet long, not little balloons.
Or like snowflakes.
This sounds like a completely different thing altogether. That doesn't sound like a lot of the other instances we were hearing. Some of the stories describe rapid dissolving, and others suggest it took some time. An analysis in 1999 in Esperance, Western Australia, describes a very different story. Many people reported massive amounts of this white filament falling from the sky for over 5 hours. It was described as thick and hanging off of everything.
That's
power lines, trees,
really
everything. And here's the kicker. The area in which it fell, because there were a lot of people who saw this, covered 10,000 square kilometers.
Wow.
Let's stop for a second. And do you think we have 10,000 square kilometers of spiders that all of a sudden decided that they're going to go flying?
My God, I hope not.
I sure as fuck hope. But if it was going to happen anywhere, it would be Australia.
I mean, I was going to say.
A local resident, Marilyn Burnett, actually took samples of this from this moment.
Awesome.
And ran them through a spectrograph and electron microscope.
So it didn't dissolve or whatever.
Didn't right away, apparently. Because once again, remember, some of them, they said they dissolved within an hour. Some say instantly. She may have taken the sample really well, and it she was touching with her hands. Maybe that affected it.
Oh, true.
She detected copper, aluminum, zinc, iron, sodium, manganese, silicon, and other minerals. This makeup is not synonymous with spiderwebs. So, I mean, spiderwebs do have some, minerals and other stuff in them, but all of this stuff together, this is not what spiderwebs in general are made out of that we know of.
Right, okay. So we can, that we know of, like you said.
So right there, we have this moment where it's obviously seems to not be a spiderweb. Mm-hmm. So this could be an outlier. It could be that some of them were spiderwebs, some of them weren't. Maybe one is actually angel hair and the spiders are different and they look similar. Maybe people, because there aren't any good photos of this, people see one thing, they think it's another, but it's not. I mean, there's so many questions here. So one of the issues, if we just say, what if they were spider webs and, her chemical analysis doesn't matter, we still have to talk about it dissolving. Spider webs in general don't dissolve. But, once again, a 1982 case in Winvale not only confirmed that the presence of spiders in the material, but that the web did actually dissolve and dissolved rapidly.
Oh, okay. But, is it depending on a situation?
Possibly.
Like a spider wants to weave a web? Weave a web? That's how you say it, right?
Yeah, they weave webs. Yeah.
Weave webs.
Spin a web as well.
Spin web. I think that's what I was trying to say. But they can make a strong one, but if it's an attack or something else, does it react differently?
Exactly.
I don't know.
So we're talking about the whole what do we know about these spiders thing. So this already proved that we had spider webs and they did dissolve. And so we're already dealing with another formula or formation of spider webs. All right, so once again, we have another thing suggesting these could actually just be spiders, and maybe we had a giant migration of 10,000 square kilometers
in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And most of these were occurring throughout the 20th century, and we're talking a lot of them heavily in the 50s, 60s, and 80s.
But the 30... Wait, what did you say, 30 feet wide or 30...
30-foot long spindles.
30-foot long, okay. Whoop.
That's a weird one.
That's a really disgusting notion if it's spiders?
Yeah.
Help me.
So when it comes to the science, there's some back and forth. There's things that support it. There's things that bring questions. There's disagreements. But the part that I think is most interesting, that the science right now, it's hard to use science to explain this because it's still just a weird thing. It's hard to put into...
So aside from the sample that one woman took, and it was minerals or whatever, is there anything else? When was that? Do you remember what you said?
I think it was in 80... No, that's not 82. It was in 99.
1999. Okay, so we had, technology for sure to, decipher already.
Yeah.
And break down information. But, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to ask is that if it is from the sky, and assuming, if aliens were even a consideration, there was nothing, radioactive about it or, anything strange that could be... unknown or
there was nothing in what I read that suggested that, but at the same time it also just dissolved and dissipated. So
her sample also dissolved eventually.
It was not mentioned in the story.
Okay.
She was just mentioned that she took a sample.
Okay. This is not to say that it could have been contaminated, because if it landed on soil, there's a lot of minerals in there that if she picked it up. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to...
Because these instances, there's so many of them, but I was reading about a lot of these instances, and they were mostly just a couple paragraphs long. They weren't super in depth or in detail, so I didn't have the ability to ask these questions or read about them.
Most of my stories are the same. So
no, exactly.
Don't worry, I get it.
So we have science to and fro, but one of the big things that I think makes everything really tricky is that how often these occurrences happen in conjunction with UFO sightings.
Oh, okay.
So as I was talking earlier, the people in Venice,
1561, right?
Well, yeah, but that's the big one, and that's the weirdest one. But we'll get to that one in a second. So the people in Venice, they saw 2 UFOs, and then they saw angel hair falling afterwards. And then we had the people in Australia that saw 12 objects in the sky, and then angel hair. And you're like, oh, okay, well maybe they just saw angel hair, big pieces of angel hair in the sky, and like, oh, I saw something that was a spaceship, but it was just angel hair or whatever. But the Nuremberg story is the one that's most interesting, because this is before people were talking about UFOs. That's why that story was so interesting on its own. Is all of a sudden
because they interpret it with their religion ideologies. Yeah. You
have this really bizarre occurrence that sounds like something fucking crazy happened. And then you have the angel hair, which makes it super interesting. So why, if it's just spiders, do they keep happening around UFO sightings?
Maybe they freak out too, and they're just spewing out.
Right?
I don't know.
You could argue that maybe,
gross.
like I said earlier, that maybe there's just giant globs of it way high in the sky, and people are misinterpreting it as UFOs. But
I don't know. Maybe.
So another scientific-based explanation before we go talking about UFOs again comes from Portugal in 1959. This explanation doesn't think it's spiders. In fact, they think it's another organism altogether, which would explain why we're not finding spiders on it. Okay. It was described as a single-cell organism producing this material, which would explain why it's not spiderweb, why it can dissolve, and why you're not finding spiders. So they're thinking it's some weird organism that we haven't documented, and maybe it has a really weird reproduction routine cycle.
So we're just getting skeeted on?
Well, no, you don't know what that is. Maybe it's how this single cell organism brings itself and populates itself throughout Earth, and we just don't know what it is yet.
Sure.
Once again, there isn't too much information on that theory. And some scientists have suggested that it's actually just super polarized dust particles in the sky that have become attracted to one another and form these long strands and groups and masses of essentially dust. And it would suggest that once it contacted something like somebody's skin, its charge would rapidly change and it would essentially disintegrate. It's hard to say because when people say it dissolves, you kind of know what disintegration and dissolving, they look different.
Yeah.
But people are saying they're not leaving a residue or anything, so it's hard to say. And I think if you have chains of dust together and then they break apart, you think you'd still see residue of dust or dust remnants.
Maybe. Yeah.
It's hard to say, but essentially, that's what some people think, that maybe it's just charged dust particles and maybe something's happening in the atmosphere. We all know about weird atmospheric occurrences. They're just causing these things to group at massive things. And that would explain the Nuremberg one if there was crazy stuff like we were talking about solar ejections, mass coronal ejections that were hitting the Earth. It would have changed.
Or we were talking about the last time, the Brown Mountains. With the ball lightning
and everything. Yeah,
but I was maybe that's what they were trying to explain it with in the Brown Mountains, but ball lightnings have occurred other places. Ooh, have ball lightnings ever emanated any kind of these spindly things? Did you ever look into that?
Nothing.
Or did
I didn't
anything
look
pop
into
up?
it. Nothing mentioned that.
I assumed it wouldn't, but I'm just asking.
But if we go back to Nuremberg and we assume it was what they were witnessing was weird atmospheric events caused by a mass coronal ejection from the sun, it would explain a highly massive charge of energy in the sky.
Okay.
And this could have caused dust in the air because they talked about how the air and everything was hard to see and the sun looked really big and everything, meaning there could have been a lot of dust in the air. It would have caused all this weird stuff to fall. It actually goes in line with that there might have just been an atmospheric event, and that's what people are seeing. There wouldn't be spiders. It would dissipate once it reaches different charges. It's actually a pretty interesting theory. And I don't think it's quacky or bonkers, and it doesn't sound like some guy just saying...
it just sounds crazy, though, in its own, but not understanding, I guess, is what is making it crazy.
No, exactly, but at the same time, it's not like them saying, "Oh, you saw flying saucer in the sky. What you actually saw was Venus and swamp gas." No, this one is like,
oh yeah, that's right.
They're talking about like we know for a fact that the atmosphere gets charged with stuff. I mean, this is what lightning is and everything like this.
Yeah.
I was like, so we know this stuff isn't out of the realm of explanation, and it would be so rare that this is why we're seeing it so rarely. So now we get to take a moment to talk about UFOs.
Woo! My fave. I got my UFO earrings on, so I'm ready.
Perfect. So apparently there is a recognized religion in France based on UFOs.
Is it Scientology?
No, that's... I mean, they believe in aliens, but I don't think they believe in UFOs.
I mean...
I don't think they believe in those UFO sightings as being representations of their particular beliefs.
Okay, I see.
It's called, if I pronounce it correctly, realism. Not realism, but realism. R-A-E with 2 dots, L-I-S-M.
Realism?
Yeah. Believers have suggested that instances of angel hair are a result of ionized air sleeting off of an electromagnetic field that would be around a UFO.
Ah, yes.
So their idea...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So they're essentially saying that this is remnants. This is what happens as UFOs travel. Maybe this is them popping into our atmosphere and disappearing and using their weird technology, but essentially it's their exhaust fumes. And they disappear and they're non-threatening and they're a little bit weird and everything, and sometimes they last longer than others, but essentially we're leaving behind the oil stains and the
it's just like our exhaust fumes.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. Yeah. It's a fun idea.
Ours are toxic.
The only thing this explains is why it's occurring after UFOs. That's the only thing it occurs.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing it explains. It explains nothing else. They have no way to prove this, but they're lucky because the fact that it dissolves and apparently leaves no trace, or the few times it's been analyzed, when it isn't obviously spiders because the spiders on it, it's like this weird material that wouldn't be in spider webs. So they can cleverly say, well, whenever they've detected spiders, it's because those are actually spiders floating around, and that's not angel hair, and that angel hair is a uniquely different thing. And when it's uniquely different, it's UFO exhaust fumes.
For sure.
So that seems to be the big one, and there a lot of people in that particular religion, this is like what they believe.
I like it.
All right.
It's no weirder than the Virgin Mary appearing after a web.
It is no
fall.
weirder. So now we get to the chase theory.
Okay. As you do a little dance.
All right. It honestly could just be spiders.
But maybe, but I don't know.
So the fact that we've seen some instances where with spiders, no one can deny the fact that without question, some of these occurrences are spider webs.
Yeah.
Now, because I haven't been able to see one that was spider webs and see an occurrence that wasn't spider webs, I haven't seen either occurrence, but like I can't see both to compare them.
When was the last one to be recorded? Do you know?
Oh, I think the one I read about one that was in like 2012. Yeah, well, we had 1999 cameras existed.
Well, I mean like accessible all the time, like anyone.
There were plenty. Cameras existed for...
So no one took a damn picture? No.
Not a good one.
All I'm saying is, if it's like a snowfall, you have time.
So because I wasn't able to witness both kinds, the spider ones and the ones that people claim aren't spiders, I can't relate them and be like, oh, you're seeing completely different things.
Yeah.
Or are they the same things? It's like there's no way for me to compare the phenomena. It's hard to say, but we do need to accept that we are learning about new spiders and discovering new species of insects all the time. Yeah. And this is a very unresearched and
under-researched.
It's an under-researched kind of spider with a spider family that has this kind of activity that we don't know. So maybe it is producing a weird kind of web that dissolves. Maybe that's kind of its thing. Maybe they fly in the sky, and as it dissolves, it allows them to fall and disperse in other places instead of being carried way too high where the spider could die. Who knows? And maybe it's a different insect. Maybe it's not a spider. Maybe it's another insect altogether that we don't know. And
it's so comforting.
Because we don't know what its mating cycle is. We don't know what its movement cycle is. That maybe this is something that only occurs every like 12 years, and there's a couple different generations that are offset, and that's why we see it. I mean, there were so many occurrences in the 50s and 60s. That seemed to be the heaviest time, and a lot of them were in Australia. And so I'm like, okay, so what if we're
Ooh.
just seeing really weird occurrences of this, and then we'll see it again in the future?
Now I'm probably just saying Australia because it's like the obvious choice.
Obviously.
But I remember seeing images of, I can't remember if it's a season or like during a season, and it happens either every year or every once in a while, but like parks become completely webbed.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of them are a worm, actually, too.
It's a worm. That's right.
And
I couldn't remember if it was a spider or a worm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm thinking of the right one, they're the ones that you can't touch because
because they not just touch, but I think they actually fling their damn stingers at you, too, as an attack or a defense mechanism.
Yeah, and so, I've seen that. So, I mean, there's weird shit, and maybe this is just some of that weird shit.
Yeah, I guess so.
I know that sounds weird, but maybe it is just some of the weird shit. And there's a part of me that if we were able to prove somehow that they were always spiders, without discrepancy or some sort of insect, I think I would easily be able to accept it and believe it. However, I currently don't.
I don't either. I don't think they're... Well, if it is insects, I'm just trying to do everything I can to believe it's not, because the fact that an insect can just attack me with their spindly things at any moment is truly the terrifying thing of this entire story.
But we're talking about paratrooper spiders who are trying to get wherever they want to go.
Get away from... I don't want to touch you. But yeah, I guess like what I'm trying to say is that's terrifying, but I do think there's something else going on, perhaps. Especially with the sightings of the UFO. What's going on here?
It gets really hard to test these theories because, the webs, at least in question, the ones that get trickier, are the ones that dissolve right away. And so it's really hard to do them. But like you said, I think the fact that they keep happening in relation to UFO sightings makes this fucking weird.
It's so weird.
And the 1500s one story is the one that I find the most interesting. Maybe the UFOs and these happening are just coincidences. Maybe the aliens...
That's a hell of a coincidence.
Maybe the aliens are coming back because eventually humans die out and they're from the future, and these flying spiders become the dominant form.
That's where they're really looking for. They're like, oh, look at their...
They're looking at the prehistory of the people who are going to eventually rule the earth.
Maybe. I mean, that's fine.
And so
let someone else have a shot.
But then there's the other theory. What if they are all spiders? And the fact is, people see UFOs all the time. That of course, when one of these occurrences of spiders happen, you are obviously going to have someone seeing UFOs. Because
are they not the same people?
Not always.
Oh.
So some of these occurrences, like the dudes in Venice and whatnot, they totally saw them both happen. But in other occurrences, like the day where it was over like 10,000 square kilometers and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
The people who saw that are different because people in a nearby county or whatnot are the ones who saw UFOs.
That would have been...
You're right.
The distance.
But they didn't see the angel hair.
Oh.
And so we're dealing with a situation where it could be... we're talking about a lot of coincidences, but once again, people see UFOs all the damn time. So... see something weird and someone else sees a UFO, it'd be easy to say, oh, they happen at the same time, but at the same time, people are seeing UFOs all the time.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, not all the time. Well, I guess enough for you to have stories every time.
But that doesn't account for 500 years ago because people weren't seeing UFOs all the time.
Exactly.
And that was allegedly when they saw angel hair. And it wasn't even the first occurrence because they knew what it was.
Yeah, and so this, whatever it is, I mean, obviously insects would have been already before us, but like, that's pretty interesting. Like, whatever is happening, if it is an insect, who knows? But I doubt it. It sounds like something in the sky. It is angel hair. It's just angels. It's their dandruff. It's fine.
So the chase theory bottom line, some of them are definitely spiders. Possibly all of them spiders, but possibly UFO skeet.
Gross.
So this one I think is super intriguing because... there's just enough stuff going on that I can't for sure say a definitive answer.
Well,
the only definitive thing is we know some of them are spiders, and that's all we can go with right now.
Well, we know because that happens with spiders, but not like to that magnitude.
Yeah. So, Charlotte's Web or E.T.?
Who knows?
Maybe both.
Maybe a little bit of both. Oh, alien spiders.
Yeah, so I actually...
What?
While I was in Europe, I read a book on my Kindle.
Oh, yeah. I totally love that.
Called Children of Time. Incredible book if you guys like hard science fiction. And it's hard sci-fi. We're not talking like Star Wars, space opera. We're talking like they go into the science and stuff can get pretty deep and it's complex. And
it's like the Lord of the Rings war.
Yeah, I would say it's like that.
Of science.
It's essentially about humans in the future have decided they're going to try to recreate humanity through crazy experiments by introducing monkeys and trying to accelerate their evolutionary process so they can like witness it. The experiment goes kind of awry. All the monkeys they were going to put on this planet that they had terraformed died in the beginning stage of the experiment, but the chemical that was supposed to accelerate evolution
You've already lost me.
was still there, and it latched on to a different creature. It latched on to spiders.
Oh, yeah. You told me about that.
And then humanity had this huge civil war. Most of them killed themselves off, and there were a few arc ships that got launched out. And we're talking centuries, millennia later, that they run into this planet that their ancestor humans have created that are now overrun with giant, intelligent, society-created spiders. And these humans on the arc ship, they need a planet because the ship is dying, and this planet has been terraformed perfectly to be great for human life, Earth. It's like Earth, but these spiders are already on it.
Sweet.
And so, essentially, it's alien spiders.
Did classic humans just decide to be like, I discovered this. Goodbye.
Well, they think it belongs to them, so they want to take it over.
Sure.
The plot's infinitely more complicated. There's other stuff. There's another villain. There's like supercomputers and even a surviving human from back then. And this whole story takes place over hundreds of years because the main character you follow, you go through it his whole time, but he keeps getting put in hypersleep and being woken up and being put in.
He's just fried.
So every chapter is like him waking up, and like every chapter is like him waking up, but like 100 years has passed, and all this crazy stuff has been happening. And you're also seeing every other chapter is telling what's happening on the spider planet. You're being told from the point of view of the spider characters. It's an incredibly good book, but fuck, is it complicated and long. But anyway, alien spiders. You'll probably have to cut this whole thing because it was so long.
It was so bizarre. It went everywhere. But I liked it.
Anyway, I just want to say. So, right now, we don't know if we have crazy airborne spiders or UFO residue. So, that is the end of episode Encounter.
Woo! I loved it. That was a really good one. That story really kind of freaked me out on a lot of levels. I'm feeling very itchy all of a sudden.
And for how often this happened, how have we not heard of it before?
Yeah, that is so weird.
It was a shocker to me.
I like nothing of this story. But I like it because I'm so intrigued. I might have to do a little bit of research myself. Not because I don't think you gave me good information. I just think that I'm sure there's more to it.
Sure.
Just like my Polybius story. If you guys think I gave you everything, you are dead wrong because there is so much to it already. Like, there's so much more to it.
I bet one's going to show up at some point, like in just some random warehouse. And the guy who runs the warehouse is like, oh, yeah, I remember that game. He's like, it wasn't very good.
It's just like, I actually got bored by...
Yeah, I'd rather just play Pong, but yeah.
Wow, that must have been a really boring Polybius game.
So, hopefully that'll show up. So, today we had a mysterious haunted ring-style video game, or possibly government-controlled. Ooh, maybe Soviet-created.
It's either CIA, KGB. It's got to be a 3-letter conspiracy theory government that is overtaking this machine.
And I don't know about you guys, but anytime they say the KGB, it just sounds more interesting. So I'm like, let's do that.
We'll just say KGB.
Yeah, because, I mean, the CIA, whatever. So...
Small potatoes.
Yeah, so crazy video game that may or may not have existed. And then we have giant floating jelly-like spider webs that may or may not be UFO residue, or a giant wave of spiders we don't know very much about.
So I love how my options are possible hazardous UFO emissions or spider butt stuff, and I'm not intrigued.
Spider butt stuff. Let's go with that. That'll be the title of the episode, Spider Butt Stuff.
That's so gross. Oh, maybe my title can be Uncle Pooh and Spider Butt Stuff.
Uncle Pooh and Spider Butt Stuff. Man, that sounds like the grossest fan fiction I've ever heard of.
Don't worry, that's not going to be the title.
Yeah.
Oh my god, but no. Okay. That was a really good story. Thank you, Jace.
So thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
We hope you'll tune in next week. We have new episodes every Saturday. We're streaming on all the sites that you can imagine, and if we're missing one, you just got to let us know. You can contact us at hotwpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep. And I really hope to hear more recommendations. And in fact, I do have one right now that I got from a friend. What's up, Chrissy? And I plan to do it probably next episode. I just couldn't do it this one because I was already so deep in Polybius.
You were in the zone.
I was too invested. I've gone too far. I couldn't go back.
So we got something to look forward to, and I'm pretty excited about it. I don't even know what the suggestion is. She doesn't tell me because
I never tell you what the episodes
she's
are.
trying to surprise me. So make sure to tune in for those all future episodes that we're going to do, and we hope you continue drinking because we know we will too.
Absolutely.
And if you're not drinking and you're listening to this when you're hungover, don't worry. That's the perfect time to listen to us because the best cure for a hangover
is fear.
Bye.
See ya.